What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mitsu Talk Tech Talk. I'm joined today by Mr. Shaun Werning, and today we're going to talk about index racing. How are you doing today, Shaun?
I'm good, Josh. How about you, man?
I'm great. With the racing season right around the corner, I feel like this is the perfect time to talk about index racing because, you talk to some people at the shootout and they're like, my car's too slow to really get into any of the classes. And, that's not really fair because index racing would be perfect for them. But a lot of people just don't know how it works.
I agree. I think index racing and really, bracket racing in general is some of the most approachable kind of racing that anyone can get into. With index racing, you got a specific number that you're looking for, but bracket racing, man, there's bracket for everybody. If your car runs 18s, you can go out there and run your 18s and you're still racing, I agree with you. There's that perception that my car is not fast enough, and that it's not true, man. Like, all cars are fast enough. You want to go race, you want to go get seat time, go get in a bracket, go have fun.
Let's start with what index racing is, because I feel like people have a little bit of a misconception about what index racing is and how it works.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I love talking about this. So I've seen these questions, before I launched into this, I've seen these questions in the lanes at races, not just at shootout. I've been to other races and seen people asking questions about index racing in the lanes. They're in the lane getting ready to go up and make a pass, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what index racing is. I've seen guys after a pass come up and go, "Oh, I won. I got closest to the number." And nah, man, you didn't get it. So I'm so glad that you gave me this opportunity to talk about all this stuff. And, I'm not an expert by any means, but that's the majority of the drag racing I've done is index racing. So I know a few things, and I'll share them with you guys. So index racing is bracket racing. And what bracket racing is, you have a dial-in, you have a number. So with index, when you say 11.5 index, the dial-in is 11.5, 11 and a half seconds. That's for everybody in the class. That's your dial-in. And then what a dial-in is, that's a number that you can't go faster than. That's it. It's just that simple. Your ET, your elapsed time, cannot be faster than 11.50. That's not your elapsed time plus your reaction time. Nope. It is your elapsed time. If you take a half a second to get the car moving, and yet you run an 11.50 and your opponent was slower than you, you still win. As long as you beat them to the finish line and your elapsed time is not faster than the dial-in, then that's it. The difference between index and bracket is bracket, you get to choose your dial-in, right? So if you know that your car runs 11.20s like a top every pass, that's your dial-in or whatever, right? Whatever number it is. That's it. Index is bracket racing, but everybody has the same dial-in. You can't run faster than that dial-in, and you still have to beat your opponent to the finish line. You got to get there first, but you can't go faster than that number on your ET.
So you talked about, you can't go quicker than the ET for the index or for the dial-in. So what if I do run a little bit quicker? Like, let's say it's 11.5 and I do run that 11.2.
Yeah, so that's called a breakout, and that's the saying with breakouts is first is the worst. So if you have a double, we'll talk about that here in a second, but that's called a foul. That we're now referring to NHRA rulebook stuff, and I've actually got some quotes pulled out of the NHRA rulebook here that I'm going to read to you guys. But if you run faster than the ET, that is considered a breakout, which is a foul, and you're disqualified and you lose. If both cars break out, that's a double breakout, and the least broken out is the winner. So there again, first is the worst. If you're both on a heater and this guy gets there first and breaks out more, then whoever this guy is, he wins. He broke out by the least. So the whole first is the worst. And that's really all that NHRA has to say on breakouts.
That's perfect. And that happened at the shootout, I believe, last year, right?
Yeah, I think our the finals pass, if I remember correctly, we were both on some steamer passes, and we both went quite a bit faster than the 10.5 dial-in.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact numbers. I had to go back and look, but I think it was like a 10.2 to a 10.3 or something like that. Like that, and that was with both cars hitting the brakes at the end. We'll talk about that some more later on in the tactics and stuff like that.
So I think the big misconception is that my reaction time doesn't really matter. So let's say um, I pull up, I get to the line, and I just go ahead and gun it before it's green, get that red light. What happens to me for the index, even if I win a perfect 11.5?
Yeah, reaction time is everything. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more later in the video here. But if you red light, if you go before it's green, that is also a foul. And and again, an HRA website says a foul start or a red light is a worse infraction than a breakout. So a racer who red lights is disqualified, even if his or her opponent breaks out. And again, this is kind of that first is the worst mentality. It's the first foul is the person who loses. If you both foul, whoever fouled first is the loser, right?
Mm.
So that's, again, that it's real simple, real straightforward. First is the worst. First one to foul, you red lit. Doesn't matter what your opponent does at that point, you've lost. So
Yeah.
you want to have that 0.001 reaction time, but you don't want to have a negative reaction time. And that's, again, I'll talk more about this. That's where seat time and learning your car and knowing when you leave and all that comes into play. But there's also some tactics with the different kinds of trees, which I've also gotten the notes here to talk about here in a minute.
Well, let's get into the tactics part, because I feel like index racing is a lot more than it seems. It's almost like a chess match instead of just a, what we would consider a normal heads up race.
I'm kind of biased. I think that index is a little bit more involved. Obviously, with heads up, you've got the games you can play on the start line, and we see that all the time where you got staging battles. But really, with heads up, you just go as fast as you can. You beat the other guy, right? With index, you're going to do that. You're going to do all that, but you can't go faster than the dial in. You can't go faster than the index. So it adds another layer there. So I'll read straight through the notes that I prepared here, for tactics or secrets that I'm going to share. Level 0 is practice cutting the best reaction time that you can. Basically level 0 is seat time. You got to learn how your car comes out of the hole and when you need to leave, right? If it's a sportsman tree, your standard yellow, 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 green, right? Like when do I leave? Do I leave between the second and third yellow? Do I leave between the third yellow and the green, right? Like, when do I leave here? So you got to go out there and you got to figure that out for your car. And the best thing I can say is employ the scientific method. Have a tire pressure. Have an idea of when you're going to go. Try to do the burnout the same way every time, right? Don't do a big, long, smoky burnout if your car does burnouts. I know I'm talking to all-wheel drive guys here predominantly, right? But if your car does burnouts, because burnouts are awesome, do the same burnout every time, right? Don't have a cold burnout one time and a hot, smoky burnout another time, right? Try to write down stuff. Try to record if it was a hot day, if the track was really hot, what kind of prep the track had. You'll hear different things like radial prep, slick prep, no prep, right? Stuff like that. You gotta kind of have a logbook, and you gotta kind of write these things down so you can start to go back and review and know, hey, this is what this car does. Now, all-wheel drive cars, rear-wheel drive cars tend to be a little bit more consistent. I've always been a front-wheel drive racer, so that stuff all matters to me, because front-wheel drive, it's real easy to lose the tires and now you're done.
Yeah.
I love when my car dead hooks, because that's good, because it never dead hooks, right? It always comes out spinning some amount. But that's level 0 is practice, 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 get seat time, get comfortable, know what your program is, right? Some cars, you got buttons you got to push, you got to hold a lever. There's all kinds of stuff going on, you can practice that sitting out in the car in the driveway or a garage or wherever, right? You can just go through and run through your process and kind of imagine what a pass is going to look like. But you got to do that, right? You got to get that seat time. You got to simulate that seat time. That's the best way to become a driver, is to just go do it, not be afraid. We all make mistakes. I've seen people launch their car in reverse. I've seen all kinds of silly stuff, and that's practice is what prevents all that. The next layer is kind of gets into the different kinds of races here. And that's well, I've got my own names for them. I call them the chase and the push. So the chase is where you're on a heater pass with your opponent either right next to you or behind you. So you're leading the way, opponent's chasing you down, right? And it's a heater pass. You got a car that'll run faster than the index. Say it's 11.5, and I got a car that can easily run 11.0s. So I'm dragging my opponent with me, right? We're going to go way faster than this 1150 dial in, and I'm dragging my opponent with me. Well, right at the finish line, at the 1,000-foot cone, because there's different cones, is something you got to go learn what the cones mean on the track. Right at the 1,000-foot, I'm going to nail those brakes. I'm going to let my opponent go by and break out, right? That's the chase. This is 100% a tactic, and that's on that last pass that we talked about at shootout, the finals pass. My opponent 100% thought he was going to get me with the chase. But the whole way down, I'm following him, and I know what's about to come. So before the 1,000-foot, I was already on the brakes, and sure enough, he nailed those brakes, tried to get me to go around him, and I didn't go around him. Right? I'm wise to these games. So that's the chase. The other tactic that you can employ is the push. So that's where this is what I did in that finals race. You're on a heater pass. Both cars are going. Both cars can run faster than a dial in, and you're behind your opponent, but you're going to chase him. You're going to keep pushing him. Right? He's leading you. He thinks he's going to drag you through and nail the brakes at the end, but you're pushing him. Let's go, man. And you see it coming. You're prepared for it. You're ready to go. Before the 1,000-foot, call 800-foot, 900-foot, you already lift and you're ready to hit those brakes because you know he's going to hit the brakes. So that's the chase and the push, right? Those are two kind of top level tactics. Without getting in any of the weird stuff on the start line, any of that. Personally, I don't like the tree games. I get in, I get stage. I always courtesy stage. I want to have a good race. I want to, whatever we're going to do, I want to do it out on the track. Mm-hmm. Now, you've also got luck. Sometimes your opponent just can't run the index. Sometimes they have car problems, right? God forbid. I don't ever want my opponent to have car problems. That's no fun, right? I want to run a race, right? Sometimes you're just with somebody that their car can't run the index, or they can't. It's a fast car. It'll run that time on different prep, different day, different tires, whatever. But you get way out on them, or they just can't run the number, and you get the lift, and you get to just coast. Cool. That's an easy win, right? The best tactic, of course, is you have a car that is just so perfectly dialed in that it runs the number every time. You're able to get really good reaction times. It runs the number every time, right? That's great. With our stuff, with being 4-cylinder and turbocharged and front wheel drive, and stuff like that, it's really hard to do that. That's much easier to do with a rear wheel drive, trans brake, naturally aspirated V8, right? That's why you see those guys that are down at your local track running bracket are almost always all that, right? It's a small block or big block Chevy. It's a Power Glide. It's a Ford 9-inch on some big ass tires, and they got a trans brake. And that's because all that stuff is consistent. Those guys can go run the same number every pass. They know exactly where to put their front tires to get the exact amount of rollout through the lines. Like, those guys got their program dialed in. And if you know some of those guys, go talk to them, right? Because those guys are wealths of information on how to do this stuff. Like, they'll teach you, they'll educate you. They're probably going to ask you, if you're running an auto setup, why you don't have a trans brake, and you have to tell them, well, it's because it'll cause the insides of the transmission to be on the outsides, and that's not good. But that's those guys know what's up. But that's if you can get your car to that point, that's a great place to be. And again, I've been doing this with front wheel drive stuff, so it's hard. Sometimes I'll spin the tires a little bit too much, even though I've got the launch limiter set the exact same, and we come out at the same amount of boost and all that. Sometimes the tires spin just a little bit more and I lose a tenth. Sometimes they hook a little bit better and I pick up a tenth, that kind of stuff. And that's where that seat time comes in. I can feel it. I'm paying attention to my opponent, see what they're doing, stuff like that. But those are kind of the few things I wanted to talk about with the tactics. Do you have any questions on that, Josh?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Just like we were kind of saying before, I mean, it feels almost like a chess match. And if you're in the staging lanes asking questions about how index racing works, then, you're playing checkers while the other person's playing chess, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep. And the most common one I've seen is people think it's darts. They think that their reaction time doesn't matter. It's just whoever can get closest to the ET. And that's not it, man. Like, you still got to win. It's still a race. You still got to get to the finish line first, but you can't go faster than that ET. And that's where it becomes chess. And here, I'll share one more. This is one of my personal little things that I learned 2 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago. I was in the semifinals against one of the Michigan guys, Andy, and I chose right lane because the majority of our passes had been right lane. So I felt like I knew the right lane of the track better than the left lane. Well, Andy was real close on my door. I got out on him, and I had the lead in the race. He was real close on my door. Well, I'm trying to turn my head, and I can't see him. And at this time, this was in my 2G. I just had a 3-point belt. I think I was running 1250 index, maybe it was 1150. I don't remember which index it was, but I only had a 3-point seatbelt. So I should have been able to turn and see him real good. But with having a helmet on and with how big the B pillars are on most DSMs, I couldn't see him. I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. So what I ended up doing was breaking out because I can hear him, but I can't see him. So I don't know where he's at. So I went too fast. Well, from that day forward, I decided that every time I have lane choice, I'm going to pick left lane. Most people choose right lane. So you'll see a lot of breakdowns in the right lane. This is just broad strokes. Not going to say this is any kind of factual data, but most guys will go, if they have lane choice, they'll go right lane. And if you've been in chip draws and stuff like that, where people get lane choice, they almost always will go, I want right lane. Like, okay, cool. So it's fine. Usually I get left lane anyway. But what left lane allows you to do is when I can't see my opponent in my mirrors or out the sides of my eyes, I can turn my head and now I can look through either the back of the car or I can look through the window. And that's even now in my current setup. I've got a cage and a seat and straps. I can still turn my head enough that I can actually see where my opponent's at fairly far down the track. And that's important because I need to know, not just at the start of the race, are they with me or not? I need to know later on, are they steaming on me? And you can see that in Aaron Anderson's video against that white GTR. He thought he had that race in the bag and he lifted and kind of pedaled and lifted and kind of pedaled. And right at the finish line, that GTR came around him and got the win. So, that's important to be able to see your opponent and watch where they're at. So my personal choice, and if you're going to race against me and I get lane choice, I'm going to pick left lane. Every time I'm picking left lane so that I can see you. And I've tried to put the big old, like the big road racing style mirror in my car. Yeah. It doesn't work good. Like I had side view mirrors on the car and I thought side view mirrors were great, but my new carbon doors don't have side view mirrors yet. So I need to get side view mirrors on there. But anything you can do to help you see where your opponent's at on the track is going to help you with index racing. Cause that's that chess match. I got to see those pieces and what they're doing.
Right. Now, Shaun, I want to go back a little bit to when you were talking about the NA V8 guys. When I'm at the shootout and I have, a pretty much bone stock 3000 GT, let's say, and I see the car in the lane next to me is a 6G75 swapped 1G with a 62 millimeter turbo, I'm thinking I'm outgunned. But, that's not necessarily the case with index racing, right?
Nah, not at all. If you can run the index, then great. If you can't run the index, go run your race, man. Like try to get a good reaction time and get out there because he might break and he might break out, just like I was just talking with Andy and with it just stuff happens. So, you're there to have fun, go talk to the other guys and ask questions, get to know people, that kind of stuff. That's a layer to racing that a lot of people overlook. But go run your program and go run and go see what happens. We know this from big racing, World Cup final stuff. The car you think is going to win isn't always the car that wins. And if you go into any race with the mindset, I can't beat that car, you can't, because you already told yourself you can't, right? You got to go into it going, all right, I'm gonna go do what I do and I'm gonna try my best. Right. And that's how you go.
Perfect. Well, Shaun, thank you so much. And if you're out there listening, I hope that you learned something. I hope that you have the confidence to hit your local track, do some index racing, come to the shootout. Please, please, please come to the shootout. Get into index racing, even if it's 12.5. It's still a lot of fun. A lot of times, I think a lot of people in the pits will tell you the index races are sometimes the most entertaining to watch. So get out there, get in the lanes, have some fun. That's really all you got to do.
Yeah, I agree. The purpose of index is to have real close, tight racing, and that's what makes it fun. And frequently at shootout, we have bracket as well. So if you can't run 12.5, if your car doesn't run 12.5, jump in on the bracket class. Yeah, you might get beat up on by that Grand National that's been coming for a couple years or whoever else, but go have fun, man. I mean, that's just go race. If racing's your thing, if you think racing's your thing, go. I understand racing's not for everybody, but if you think you want to go race, man, go try it. There's almost always somebody that will show you the ropes and talk you up and help you through stuff. Just go get in there and go try. That's all I can say.
Well, perfect. Shaun, thank you so much for joining me. And like I said, I hope you learned something. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.